The Boy Prince of Jerusalem. In the holy city of Jerusalem, a young boy named Baldwin was born in 1161. He was the son of Amalric IV, the king of Jerusalem. From an early age, Baldwin showed courage and intelligence beyond his years. But there was a hidden struggle inside him. When he was just 9, his teachers noticed something unusual. Baldwin couldn't feel pain in his right arm. Doctors soon discovered he had leprosy, a disease feared by everyone at the time. Even with this terrible news, Baldwin refused to give up. He learned to fight with a sword and ride horses, becoming skilled despite his weak body. His father became king, but the boy knew that one day he might also wear the crown. Baldwin's disease did not stop his dreams. Instead, it made him stronger inside. As he grew, people saw him as brave and wise, even though they feared his sickness. In 1174, when his father died, Baldwin was crowned king of Jerusalem at just 13. People whispered about his illness, but Baldwin stood tall. He promised to protect his kingdom from enemies and lead his people with fairness. The boy who couldn't feel pain would become a king who felt deeply for his land and people. Baldwin becomes a warrior king. As a young king, Baldwin knew he had to prove himself. The kingdom of Jerusalem faced many dangers from Muslim armies, especially from Saladin, a powerful leader. Baldwin, despite his illness, led his knights into battle. He wore heavy armor to cover the signs of leprosy, and his courage on the battlefield inspired his men. In 1177, Saladin attacked the kingdom. Baldwin, though weak and ill, led his army to the Battle of Montgizard. Against all odds, the small Crusader army defeated Saladin's larger force. Baldwin's bravery was legendary. People called him the Leper King, but they also saw him as a warrior who would not give up. Even as his disease worsened, Baldwin continued to rule and fight. He made smart alliances and kept his enemies guessing. Baldwin knew his time as king might be short, but he wanted to make every day count. He refused to hide away in the palace. Baldwin also worked hard to keep peace among the Crusader lords, who often argued and fought among themselves. His strength as a leader was not only in battle, but also in keeping the kingdom united. But inside, Baldwin knew that his body was slowly breaking down. His hands and face were scarred by leprosy. Still, he kept leading, determined to hold his kingdom together. The fight against time. By his late teens, Baldwin's disease had advanced. His hands were weak and his eyesight faded. But the young king refused to step back. He ruled from his throne, making decisions for his people. Baldwin knew he needed help. He appointed his close friend Raymond of Tripoli as regent to help manage the kingdom. At the same time, Baldwin struggled to keep the peace between the Crusader lords and knights. Some of them did not respect him because of his illness. Others tried to take advantage of his weakness. Baldwin stayed strong, using his sharp mind to outsmart his enemies. Saladin, knowing Baldwin's condition, continued to attack the Crusader lands. Baldwin led several campaigns to stop him, even when his health made it hard to ride. He traveled in a litter carried by soldiers, giving orders from the battlefield. His people admired his courage, but Baldwin also knew he couldn't rule forever. He began planning for the future, arranging the marriage of his sister Sibylla, hoping to secure the crown for his family. His actions were always for the kingdom, even if it meant personal sacrifice. Each day, Baldwin fought not only Saladin, but also the disease inside him. Time was running out, but the Leper King refused to give in. The rise of Saladin. While Baldwin fought his illness, Saladin grew stronger. The Muslim leader united the lands of Egypt and Syria, becoming a powerful force against the Crusaders. Baldwin understood that Saladin was unlike any enemy before. He was clever, patient, and respected by his followers. Baldwin made bold moves to defend his kingdom. He built castles along the borders, strengthened alliances, and prepared his army for war. But the challenges kept growing. Baldwin's disease left him weak, often unable to move without help. His face was covered by cloth to hide the effects of leprosy. Even so, Baldwin faced Saladin in many battles. One of the most important was the Siege of Kerak, where Saladin tried to break the Crusader stronghold. Baldwin, despite his weakness, led an army to relieve the siege, forcing Saladin to retreat. The young king's actions earned him respect from his people and even from his enemies. Saladin once sent Baldwin fruit and ice as a sign of respect, knowing the king suffered in the heat. But Baldwin knew that Saladin would never stop. The king's body failed him more each day, yet his mind stayed sharp. Baldwin prepared for the battles ahead, knowing the kingdom's future was slipping through his fingers. A kingdom divided. Inside the Crusader kingdom, danger grew from within. Baldwin's sister Sibylla and her husband Guy of Lusignan caused unrest. Many nobles distrusted Guy, fearing he was not strong enough to rule if Baldwin died. Baldwin, seeing the risk, tried to remove Guy from power. In 1183, Baldwin crowned Sibylla's young son, Baldwin V, as co-king. This was Baldwin's attempt to secure the throne for his family and keep the kingdom united. But the fighting among nobles only grew worse. Baldwin, too weak to walk, still sat in council, trying to hold peace among the lords. Meanwhile, Saladin waited for the kingdom to fall apart. Baldwin's sickness had left him blind and unable to move much, but he still made decisions. He traveled in a covered litter, inspecting his troops and castles. His body was failing, but his will remained unbroken. Baldwin's efforts to protect his people never stopped, even when he knew death was near. The kingdom he loved was breaking apart. Factions argued for power, and Baldwin's enemies grew bolder. The Leper King watched as the world around him became more dangerous. But Baldwin would not let go until his last breath. The king still fought for his people, even when they no longer listened. The final campaign. In his last year, Baldwin launched one final campaign against Saladin. He was carried in a litter, too weak to sit on a horse, but his spirit stayed strong. Baldwin led his army into battle, showing his people that he was still their king. The campaign succeeded in stopping Saladin's advance, but Baldwin knew it would not last. His body was failing. His face was covered with cloth, and he could barely speak. The king's strength was gone, but his willpower kept him going. Baldwin returned to Jerusalem, knowing he had little time left. He called his nobles together, trying to secure the future of his kingdom. He made his nephew Baldwin V the sole king, hoping this would keep the peace. But Baldwin also knew the kingdom was weak. The lords argued and plotted, and Saladin was waiting for the right moment. Baldwin had done everything he could, but he understood that he would not live to see what happened next. He spent his last days in his palace, surrounded by a few loyal friends. His body was broken, but he still ruled from his bed. Baldwin accepted that his time was over. He had given all he could to his people. The Leper King prepared to face the end. The Leper King's last days. Baldwin's final days were quiet. The once mighty king, who had fought battles, led armies, and ruled a kingdom, now lay in his bed, his body too weak to move. His face was hidden, his hands were bandaged, and his voice was soft. He spent his last moments with his closest allies, like Raymond of Tripoli and Balian of Ibelin. They listened to his last orders, knowing their king had fought harder than anyone could expect. Baldwin thought about his kingdom, his people, and the battles he had fought. He knew he had done his best, even when the world around him crumbled. He accepted that his fight was over. The streets of Jerusalem were quiet as the king grew weaker. The people whispered about their young king who had ruled them for so long, despite his terrible illness. They had seen him fight on the battlefield, lead armies, and face Saladin himself. Finally, in 1185, Baldwin IV, the Leper King of Jerusalem, closed his eyes for the last time. He died in his palace, surrounded by a few loyal friends. His body had failed, but his courage had never left him. The boy who could not feel pain had lived as a king who never gave up.